You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of November 24th, 2023. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where we are truly thankful for all the kindness and support we get all year round from our listeners and readers. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
Now, some of you out there we have met in real life.
Yes,
Some of you live halfway around the world. Some of you lurk and only pop up once in a blue moon to say hello. And some of you drop us a note daily or weekly, and sometimes hourly. We have a few listeners who send us links to things all the time.
All day long.
And that's fantastic. It's very helpful. Often we use those things in the show. We have people that send us links for Junior Dude and for other kids in our family. So you're thinking of us, and we're so grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, after 13 years of doing this, we're astonished, even today, that with 2 laptops and donated microphones and the internet, we're able to reach so many people and love what we're doing and get all the feedback that we do. It's a miracle. We just think it's a miracle.
It's a miracle. And the most comments we've gotten recently were from several of our atheist friends about our End of the World podcast, which they loved.
Yeah, the End Times. No Fair Remembering End Times got the most comments and the most glowing reviews of anything we've ever done, which is so funny. But because when I talk religion, I cringe a little bit. I think, I don't want to force anything on anyone. But it's a fascinating topic, and everyone seems to be interested in it. So.
And so much of what we talk about behind the politics of so many people who are so wrong for this country and doing so much harm is their warped perception of religion and their fanatical belief. And you can't understand why they're doing what they're doing until you understand that they really believe this stuff. And it's really scary what they believe. Now, that was a shock and surprise. And we always learn something new about our listeners all the time because there's always more to know. And this week, we are trying something different because last night I was feeling a little doomed about the future. And my wife asked me what was wrong, and I told her that just at that moment, I was doing some serious thinking about what to do in 2024 if Trump won. What's the plan B? And thinking about the unthinkable was depressing the hell out of me. So we did what we always do. We talked about it. You and I just talked for a while. And then you took out your phone and said that you bet that other people were feeling the same thing too, but didn't want to, demoralize their own side or depress their family or bring down the room, and were maybe keeping it to themselves. And maybe we should just talk about it. And that would be our podcast for this week.
Yeah. And I remember thinking that all of the times that we've said that the podcast that we do is simply a segment of the conversation that we have throughout the week.
It is.
This was one of those conversations where I was like, no, I want to capture this on audio. Because Driftglass was in a mood, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But what he was saying was also really important. And I will tell you that those of you who listen to this podcast for comfort and solace and sitting around the kitchen table with friends and so forth, you might want to take a pass on this one.
Yeah.
Driftglass expresses just how damn scary the future might be.
Yeah, the curse of the science fiction writer is thinking about what if, and what if is not always or usually not a very happy outcome.
Yeah. It's not a pretty picture, and particularly thinking about what happens if Trump wins is just a horrifying horror movie. It's not science fiction, it's a horror movie. So there's no comfort in that. It's okay if you're not in the mood over the holiday weekend for that. You can pass this episode by. We'll be here next week. And I woke up this morning wondering if this particular recording we did was on brand for our podcast for that reason. Because generally speaking, we're trying to give vocabulary to all of us progressives and Democrats about how to talk to people. And this is not that. And this is not a positive message. But asking Driftglass if we could record fresh today, and then we listened to Keith Olbermann this morning, and he was saying almost exactly word for word what Driftglass said last night. I just looked at him and went, oh, hell.
Yeah.
I also don't think this podcast is one that it's okay to have on with the kids in the room doing something else, because it gets dark. It's not full of swears, but it's an issue and a concern that we have in the back of our minds, and we suppress from time to time. Mm-hmm. And Driftglass was not in the mood to suppress this at that point.
No.
So, I'm just giving everyone that caveat. Listen to it when you can handle it. And if you can't, hey, we'll be here next week with vocabulary and our regular programming.
Sometimes it just helps to know that other people out there are as depressed and frightened as you are. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if there's, 80 million of us, then we can do something about it.
Right. Right.
And for the record, I did remember the second thing I learned listening to Charlie Sykes interview Brian Stelter about his, you'll get this when it comes up in the podcast, about his new book about Fox. Brian Stelter wrote a book about Fox, and it just dropped this week, and he's everywhere to be found. And that was that Charlie Sykes is actually quite aware that the right-wing war on the media has been going on literally for decades. I believe he says at least since Spiro Agnew, which for a guy who was on right-wing talk radio for 30 years and pretends this all started in 2016 was kind of fucking hilarious. And you would never know from listening to his podcast that this is the same Charlie Sykes who was a full bird colonel in the war on media for 30 years. Mm-hmm, so it's weirdly, vertiginous. Listening to this person say, on the one hand, I've known for decades that this is awful. And by the way, I didn't know anything was wrong until 2016. And well, never mind. You're not going to ever be in a room with someone like me who will ask you questions like that. So you can go ahead and say whatever you want. Anyway.
So this recording that I'm about to plug into the podcast is not edited for content. I did sound edit, but I didn't take anything out. There's no news roundup this time, no internet kitty or freshly poured ad, where it's just us each having a drink and talking off the cuff.
Uh-huh.
And yes, indeed, it's a little eerie how close Keith Olbermann's monologue today,
yep,
came to what we were talking about last night.
Yeah.
So we're not the only ones. And so now, on with the show. We're just deciding to do a little recording on my phone because Driftglass and I started to have a conversation about 2024 election, and one of us is about to jump off the cliff, and the other one is trying to pull him back from the cliff. So
that's not quite true.
Well, explain what's going on.
What's quite true is there is a better than even chance that Donald Trump will be reelected next year because of a lot of factors that you are very dismissive of.
Well,
I'm very worried about. Not dismissive. That's not the right word.
No, I'm not. I'm trying to pull you back.
You're enthusiastic about our chances.
Yep.
I am less than enthusiastic about the people who will not turn out to vote, who will throw away their votes on RFK, about college students who go, I don't like old people. I'm going to vote for Cornel West, who's 800 years old.
Yep.
And that will be just enough, once again, along with cheating and along with the fact that Fox is going to just beat this drum forever, and along with the fact that the New York Times and other mainstream media are going to keep going, it really is both sides.
Yeah, they're going to fail democracy. Yep,
just enough to put Trump into office. Mm-hmm. So what's your plan B? And if you don't have a plan B, then you will end up again weeping and crying, as we both were, and unable to breathe when Donald Trump is the winner of the 2024 election. Because it's going to be so much worse next time.
Yep.
So And the idea that we're not going to have a plan B because that's not going to happen that's how airplanes crash. That's how ships run up on the rocks. Like, no, we'll be fine. But we're not going to be fine.
Yeah.
Now, is there a good chance that Joe Biden will win? Sure. But there's an equally good chance that Donald Trump is going to win. And the fact that there's an equally good chance Donald Trump could win should tell us something about the country we live in. Because the country we live in, there are a third of the people who are fascists. And they're going to be fascists whether Trump wins or loses. And if Trump loses, they're going to be shooting people in the streets. Then what's your plan B for that? If Donald Trump wins, they'll be legally arresting people, like you and I. What's your plan B for that? And
do we all need to be applying for visas to Thailand, or
we all need to be applying for FOID cards for carrying guns?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
If we're not, if they're armed and we're not, guess who goes up against the wall in every revolution?
Yeah.
Those nice, unarmed, peaceful people. The people who survive that revolution are the people who are not idealistic about their fellow human being, who are brutally realistic about how mobs behave.
Well, I found it interesting about 2016.
And now a sip of whiskey.
Because Driftglass needs a sip of whiskey after recommending that we have a gun in our house, which we are not likely to do.
No.
And I don't want to get people too frightened about that kind of thing.
Why not?
Well, I understand where you're at mentally. I do. You're terrified and also wanting a plan.
I'm deeply concerned. I would like members of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post and CBS and ABC to be as concerned as I am.
Well, the Wall Street Journal is never going to be as concerned as you are.
No, it won't.
They are pushing the, Joe Biden is too old in editorials.
Yes, they are.
Today.
So
that's Murdoch, and Fox and Murdoch are not your friends at all. So that's not going to happen.
I was very happy to see Dave Roberts on the Chris Hayes show tonight. I've said as much, and I'm very happy. After 20 years of shouting, having some one person show up on the air to say what liberals have been saying for 20 years was a good thing. I think it's about 15 years too late, but that's great.
Well, and what he said was, let's summarize that. At least what I heard him say that was heartening to me was, you've got Fox and Republicans on the right punching the Democratic Party.
All day, every day.
Endlessly.
And we watched 2 seconds of Fox tonight, just in time to see whatever that platinum-haired idiot dude is on there. Also Roberts, I think.
Yeah, John Roberts.
Talking about, my mom had Alzheimer's, and we had to drag her kicking and screaming to the home, and that's pretty much where Joe Biden is.
Exactly.
That's what your uncle, that's what the legitimate
Meemaw is hearing.
Conservative media is saying all day long.
Right.
That's...
And then Roberts on the Chris Hayes show was saying, on the left, we have people punching the Democratic Party for not being left enough.
Also
those are the noisemakers on the left, right? Or the people that take up the media's attention.
No, these are the good centrist Democrats. The good centrist Democrats who can't find a nice thing to say about Joe Biden.
Yeah, right.
So everybody shits on the Democratic Party.
Right, everybody.
And saying that Joe Biden's a good president is like...
Rarely heard. Yes.
And if you listen to Never Trump podcast, which I do, I was listening to Charlie Sykes interviewing Brian Stelter about Brian Stelter's book, which is all about Fox News, which to my mind is like watching the Chernobyl disaster while the Chernobyl disaster is happening. It's like, no, we know if you need the gory details of people's faces falling off and coughing up blood, that's fine. Go ahead and buy his book. But we already know how bad it is at Fox. We all already know it. But the interview exposed 3 things. Charlie Sykes is adamant that, number one, people don't remember the past. It's tragic how people don't remember the past, except Charlie Sykes doesn't remember anything before 2016.
Right.
Number 2, I forget what number 2 is. I have it written down somewhere. Number 3, and it's both sides. and it's both sides.
Yeah.
And if we could just round up all the people who say it's both sides and put them on an island somewhere, and then, I don't know, nuke that island or launch it into space, or maybe that island turns out to be Godzilla's back. He just rolls over and those people just all go away. That'd be great. But that's the nice centrist position.
Yes, it is.
It's both sides. When you aggregate the relentless right-wing media pounding that goes on every day, and the fact that the mainstream media cannot get it through their heads that they're going to be the first fuckers up against the wall.
I think it's starting to dawn
too late.
on them.
Too fucking late.
But it is too late.
Way too late. Because they've already done their job. They've already convinced that third of independent centrist voters that both sides are equally bad. No matter what Trump does, well, Joe Biden's old.
Yeah.
Same thing. Oh, Hillary had those emails, and it doesn't matter because the damage is done. This is, again, getting back to Chernobyl. At some point, the disaster is inevitable. You can't hit the button and it shut it all down because that button doesn't work anymore because the button's based on a false premise. It's great that a tiny freaking handful of people in the media are finally noticing that the barbarians are at the gates and they're armed and they have their own media and they don't listen to you. And the best they can do is, Donald Trump's speeches are alarming. Many people who are authoritarian experts are alarmed by Donald Trump speaking.
That's the best they can do.
New York Times today.
Yeah.
So you have a vast number of people out there who are convinced there's no difference between the two parties. And then you have the Democrats. And there's a depressingly large number of Democrats who shit all over the Democrats.
Right.
All the time.
Right.
It's never enough. It's never good enough. And I don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils, so I'm going to vote for fucking Cornel West, I was wrong. He's 900 years old. Or I'll throw my vote away on, Robert Kennedy. Or I'll throw my vote away on some third party, the no labels people will cook up. I just don't want to be responsible for the end of the world. And I don't want to vote for the old guy. So I'm just going to piss my vote away. And you add all that up, and you end up with a very good chance that Donald Trump is taking the oath of office in January of 2025. And what's your fucking plan then? Not 10 years from now. What's your plan for when Donald Trump takes the oath of office? What's the plan B? And I don't hear a plan B. Not from you. I'm not talking to my beautiful wife. I'm talking to people out there who have this naive idea that this is the system we have for the rest of our lives. These fascists are going to be with us for the rest of our lives, and they never get tired, and they never stop, and they never stop harassing people, and they never stop bombing things and shooting people, and they never shut up, and they never run out of money. They're fucking relentless because there's billionaires behind them who will fund everything they do.
I disagree with you there. I think fascist dictatorships are notoriously short-lived and end violently, and it's a horrible thing to experience as a average citizen in those times.
Here's my rebuttal.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you. The fascist government in Germany ended when Berlin was bombed flat and Nazis were executed. And the country was forced to denazify itself at the point of a gun.
Yep.
No one in this country is going to force Fox viewers to start behaving like citizens.
Nope, that's
They're
right.
going to let them keep on
Right. They're going to let them rebrand, for God's sake.
Forever.
Yes.
So the fascist movement in this country is never going to, unless there's a rigorous attempt at social hygiene that involves fucking re-education camps for these people, then that's just never going to stop. That is the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And by the rest of our lives, I mean 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And then some demographic change or climate change or something will happen and whatever. But for the rest of foreseeable future, it's going to be the people in the middle who can't be bothered to wake the fuck up and defend their country, the right who's hideously well-funded and will be well-funded till the end of time, and us, who have nobody with money who's willing to back us, who have no voices in the media to speak of, and who are trying desperately to hold the democracy together while people on our own team are shitting all over what we do.
One caveat on that, and that is that the Joe Biden campaign has much more money than the Donald Trump campaign.
That's great.
Now and through 2024. They just do.
And before we started this little experiment, my question was, so what?
Yeah.
Whose mind will be changed? What will that all
Well,
be?
I think perhaps that is always the case in elections since we started our podcast.
Right.
Which is you have to spend your money to convince the wishy-washy, I'm not sure, I don't know, I guess I'll vote for so-and-so people. And you and I remember...
My turkey cost $90.
Right. No, I didn't.
It's the David Brooks theory of economics.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, he showed his turkey on Twitter. He took a picture of it.
Is this Jason Chaffetz?
Jason Chaffetz showed a picture of his turkey.
His Tiffany turkey.
Tiffany turkey. It was a grass-fed, natural farm, California turkey that he bought in Utah.
Great.
Fresh.
Great.
Not frozen, fresh turkey.
Okay.
So, yes, he did spend a ton of money. He spent and it was a 21-pound turkey, too. It was huge. Mm-hmm. So, yes, he did spend a lot on that turkey. That's not what turkeys cost to anyone else.
Well.
But anyway, we're talking about the Wishy-Washy Center.
Right.
And you may recall the story I've told several times on the course of the last 10 years of podcasting I'm going to edit that out.
Nope. That stays in.
That stays in. The burp stays in.
Keeping it real.
We're keeping it real. He's drinking whiskey. And
I'm not chugging whiskey.
he's not chugging whiskey. He's sipping whiskey.
I'm sipping one shot of Lagavulin with 1 kilo
Very
ice in
nice.
it.
And I'm sipping some Old Vine Zinfandel.
Right. And we just got done playing trivia.
And we just got done playing trivia, and Driftglass has been low the past few hours.
And the kids aren't here.
Yeah, they'll be here tomorrow, two of them. So this is where we're at. Mm-hmm. The Wishy-Washy Center, middle people, who are
Centrist independent voters.
We're independent. I'm mostly independent, but you remember the story I've told several times of the being in a restaurant, and I don't know if you were with me or not. I think you were, and a bunch of young white-collar workers were having an after-work drink, and maybe dinner. And they were talking about, all of a sudden the election came up, and it was October. Mm-hmm. And it was 2008. It was 2008. Yeah. And so this was before we were podcasting. Yes. So you weren't in the picture. 2008 election.
Oh.
And the guy said, I guess I'm going to vote for McCain.
And the other ones.
Everyone at the table reamed him.
Right.
And then the waitress came over and reamed him.
But remember why?
Why did they ream him?
No, why? Why? Because Obama was cool.
Exactly. Obama was cool.
Biden's not
and
cool.
Dark Brandon is cool.
Biden is 800 years old.
Well, Dark Brandon is cool.
I agree.
Yeah.
He's cool to me.
Yeah.
He's old.
Well, and the way he's running the campaign so far is laughing at Trump and doing Dark Brandon merch and glow-in-the-dark coffee mugs that are selling out.
You know what would be a really good strategy for the Biden campaign with all of its money? And I'm being facetious now.
No, go right ahead.
Build a time machine and go back to 1994 and build a liberal media so that all that cool stuff will get out to someone other than the faithful who are faithful already.
Yeah.
Because the people who let's go back in time. Let's make this a little no fair remembering stuff. Every Democratic president since Clinton has been the devil.
Mm-hmm. According to Fox. Yeah.
Everyone has been the fucking devil.
Yeah.
And before they were inaugurated, they were the devil.
Well, I think it's gotten worse lately.
When Bill Clinton was president, he was the devil. Mm-hmm. Same people who hate Biden, same people, the devil.
Right.
And then when Obama ran for president, it was, why can't he be more like Bill Clinton?
Yes.
Clinton, remember back when we all used to get along and stuff? That's how absolutely reprogrammable their memories are. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But Obama's the devil.
Yeah.
I mean, why couldn't he be more like Bill Clinton? We love Bill Clinton. We disagree with him a little bit. No, you impeached him.
Yes.
Because you're fucking monsters.
Right.
And then, why can't Biden be more like, Obama? Obama was cool. Why can't he be more like Obama? He's just old. He's an old white guy from Scranton. Why can't he be more cool? And that is never going to change.
Yeah.
Whoever Democrats run is the devil. And a bunch of people, including Nikki Haley, are running on, well, Joe Biden's going to be dead, so it's going to be Kamala Harris.
Oh.
And you know what an incompetent bitch she is.
Who they should keep her name out of their whore mouths is what I think.
Well, the entire mainstream media thinks there's a Kamala Harris problem.
Yeah.
Because, vice presidents are famous in American history for overshadowing their president and being more popular than their president.
Right.
I mean, Lyndon Johnson just crushed
We had a whole
Kennedy.
podcast about that. Yes.
I know.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what Joe Biden says to the faithful. What we lack is what we've always lacked, is the ability to deliver facts, truth, and good, cool stuff to the people who need to hear it. My contention is a third of the country is locked down, is going to vote for Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump dies, they'll vote for his corpse. It doesn't matter.
If it's in jail, they'll vote for inmate Trump.
They are a fully, and even Joe Scarboro used the F word this morning. I understand.
Yeah, he said
fascist.
Yeah.
You're 20 years late, Joe, and you helped build this shit.
You absolutely helped with this. Yes.
And because you control the cameras, we're never going to hear again on the mainstream media how Joe Scarborough helped build Donald Trump ever.
No.
But now you're a hero of the resistance. That's great. But. So, a third of the country voting public are fascists. Full-blown, never going to change fascists.
3 to 37% has been very consistent.
So, and the Democrats are semi-reliable, but this whole Joe Biden backs Israel. How many people has that alienated? I don't think it should matter. I think that I don't care. I think that that's a horribly complicated problem, and he's processing it as best he possibly can. But
and much better than Trump.
Well, and that's the thing. You know who would do better than that? Than both of them would be Robert Kennedy or Cornel West, who's 1,000 years old, actually.
Right. Of course.
But that's those people decide elections, and if they stay home, or if they decide to flip their votes, or if they Remember 2016, I know that you think and are probably right that it was decided by people who were voting as a joke.
Yep.
White guys who voted. But the joke was not funny by 2020.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't funny by Inauguration Day 2017.
But
to be honest,
Trump's vote total didn't go down in 2020. It went up by 8 million votes, 7 million votes. So whoever was voting as a joke in 2016...
Well, don't forget that COVID allowed a lot of people to vote by mail who didn't vote in 2016.
Yeah, but the point is...
There were more Republicans available to vote.
That doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
What matters to me is that there are no good Republicans.
I know.
They're all bad. All Republicans are fucking evil people. And I don't care if they're your neighbor. I don't care if they help you barbecue or watch your kids. They're fucking bad people. All of them are bad. All of them. And they're all going to vote for Trump. Trump's vote total went up. I don't care what the reason was. I don't care if it was fear of an invasion from Mars.
Right.
More people voted for Donald Trump in 2020 than in 2016. That should scare the shit out of you. Because those people are going to continue voting for Donald Trump. And they love it. They love the fact that he makes liberals mad. And they love the fact that he's going to build that wall. And they love the fact that he's personally responsible for Israel being awesome. And they love him. They love him in a way that Democrats do not love anybody.
Yep.
They tolerate Joe Biden.
That's right.
That's right. They're
because of fascism. Because it is hero worship.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a third of the country.
Yep. That is 37% of the country.
And then you have the weak, vacillating Democrats who would much rather vote for anybody else except anybody else you put in front of them. I don't know.
Maybe not.
Gavin Newsom has flaws. I'm not sure about this. And, you can sit down with them. I stood in line at Columbia College for the Huffington Post event.
Oh, yeah.
Behind some younger folks. And we were talking, and they were furious that Barack Obama basically didn't fiat into existence single-payer health care.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they're sick of it. I supported him, I backed him, and I'm not getting exactly what I want, so fuck Obama.
Yeah, right.
And that's the kind of petulant, childish thing you get from children who vote. Who are, I voted again. My bad.
Yeah, right. You voted for John Anderson.
Guess who my first vote was for?
Yeah.
It was for John Anderson because Jimmy Carter wasn't pure enough for me.
Yep.
And Ronald Reagan was crazy. Well, Donald Trump is crazy.
Yep.
And Joe Biden's not pure enough. And I'm worried there's enough 20-somethings out there who will like, you know what, I just can't bring myself to do it. I just cannot.
Right.
And
let's not forget that Ronald Reagan got elected.
He did. And they got reelected.
Yeah.
So my point is, if Joe Biden could spend all of that juicy money going back in time and building a liberal media on which all of those great ads by the Midas people and by the and the Lincoln Project, all those lovely ads could be delivered to a larger audience than people who already are going to vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
That'd be great. But there is no such media.
I think one thing that gives me solace is that Kentucky's governor was elected with a very simple ad by a 20-something woman who'd been raped by her stepdad. There are issues that just matter this year. And I know you think Republicans are fixing the abortion issue. I can tell you as a woman, they are not.
I don't think they're fixing it. I think that they are smart enough to understand that they have activated an explosive device that is dangerous. They're trying to defuse the bomb.
It's too late.
Oh, I hope so. I hope you're right. I hope, believe me, I hope all of this is true.
Yep.
I hope abortion and pot and infrastructure, etc. But I just see Democrats trying to convince people that policy matters, and Republicans saying Deutschland über alles.
Right.
And there's no room in this country for both those points of view. And the people who will decide are those cowardly weirdos in the middle who just want the shouting to stop.
Yeah, except that Trump is not campaigning to those people at all.
No, he's not. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because the New York Times is campaigning to those people. And the New York Times is telling those people that both sides are equally bad. And those people just want both sides to shut up. They want the arsonists and the people who are calling the fire department to stop yelling. And that's all they hear. And that's all they hear from their trusted news media like NPR.
I don't think young voters are reading the New York Times.
No.
I know there's a whole bunch of media outlets you're allowing the New York Times to represent. But and the Republican Party is going to be broke in 2024, like it or not. Trump's just spent it all. So, that gives me a little bit of solace. And I do think Biden is going to be, surprise, the cool candidate.
I would love that to be true.
Yeah.
I would love that to be true.
So,
and I'm not reading polls. I'm not reading polls.
Well, polls don't matter right now. No. And national polls never matter. So
the subheading for this podcast, which I think this is now our podcast, was going to be pundits are bad science fiction.
And
all they do is
that.
Science fiction is predicated. Most of science fiction is predicated on the assumption, on the writing prompt of what if time travel is possible? What if you can travel faster than the speed of light? What if you can go back in time? What if aliens come? What if? But science fiction was never intended to be predictive. It's just writing fiction about what happens if a particular trend continues or a particular thing is possible or whatever. Pundits are using the same prompt, but they're trying to be predictive, and they're wrong all the time. And all of their predictions are toxic because they're taken as news, as smart people with great insight giving you information about what's possibly going to go on. And all they do is read the polls and shit themselves. And the people who are supposed to be on our side spend a third of their time shitting on the Democratic Party because they want to be seen as center-left, center-right, not independent, not tribal. That's their business model. So even the people who've come over to us from the right have one foot in the Democratic Party, but they always talk about, I'm politically homeless now because the Democrats suck and I don't like Democrats and Democrats are awful and Democrats are feeble and Democrats don't know how to do anything. Those are our friends. Those are the people that get on MSNBC as our friends.
Yeah.
That's how they talk about the Democratic Party when you're not paying attention. Maybe you should pay attention to what they're saying to their vast audiences that were given to them by the fact that we told the world they're our allies now and they can be trusted. And what they say on their shows every fucking day is, yeah, Trump's bad, everything's horrible. But, Democrats are pretty shitty too. And that's why punditry is science fiction. Because punditry is pretending they can see the future or speculating about the future. But they never speculate about a future where Joe Biden is right. Mm-hmm. And Joe Biden is correct.
Right.
And Joe Biden's really, really good
and
job.
Doing a fantastic job as president.
Is widely known.
Yep.
And wouldn't it be cool if people actually knew what the fuck Joe Biden was doing when he was doing it? Wouldn't it be cool if people knew that his infrastructure stuff was great and the climate change proposal or the climate change plan he got passed through Congress as the biggest climate change plan in history? Wouldn't it be great if they knew he stood on the side of unions? Wouldn't it be great if they knew the labor movement was strong in this country and they're backing Joe Biden? But you can't read that in any media source other than the fucking liberal blogs.
Yep.
Because nobody wants to tell that story. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that nobody wants to be visited in the dead of night by a mob that says the liberal media is the problem and have their houses burned down and then have Elon Musk saying they had it coming because Elon Musk is a fucking fascist.
Yep.
He's not just a fascist. He's an anti-Semitic fascist. He's a Nazi fascist. And he owns the largest public utility social media platform in the universe. So all of the good stuff that we talk about, the messages, are awesome. They never get out of the barn because there's no medium to get them to the hands of the people. And I don't mean once or twice. I mean the kind of regularity and persistence and incessant pounding on your door every minute of every day that you have for, I don't know, St. Jude or sad dogs.
Yep.
I cannot turn on my television without having a sad dog in my face.
Jardiance.
Jardiance. That is not true, except when the political season comes around, everyone tunes out politics because there's a million ads.
Maybe Joe Biden needs to dance and start talking about his type 2 diabetes.
That'd be great. That'd be great. So I'm not saying that Joe Biden is going to lose because I'm not a pundit. I'm not predicting it. I'm saying that there is a very good chance that everyone's best intentions and everyone's hopes are going to be crushed come next November.
Okay,
and
so let me say something. Let me say something because Bible bitch would come at you with, "Fear not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God." And I know you just did a raspberry in my face. Okay. Yeah. But I'm not going to come at you with that. Mm-hmm. What I am going to say is armor on. Get your armor on and get ready to fight. And I, frankly, speaking as a
mother and a patriot
and a Democrat who wants to win, would rather have the Democratic activist community terrified that Trump might win.
Yes.
Than have polls saying that Biden is 15 points ahead and we have nothing to worry about. Because Hillary Clinton having a 92% chance of winning,
95%.
Or 95% or whatever, was
wrong.
Yeah.
It was wrong.
It was wrong. And it made everyone complacent on election day. And enough people could say, "Oh, I'm just going to vote for Trump as a joke because Hillary's going to win. It's inevitable." Evan
McMullin looks good.
Evan McMullin looks really good, both sides. He's talking about both sides all the time, and he's saying what I'm thinking. So I would rather actually have this fear of God in me, the fear of the future in me and you, in terms of, I don't want it to take over our lives and spoil our Thanksgiving, but I don't want to be complacent, and I don't want to be happy at this point. I want to be a little bit scared. I'm not going to be as terrified as you tried to make everybody today, Driftglass. But I want people to be on the edge about this because it matters. And we've got to give it everything we've got.
In high school, I didn't play basketball because my coach didn't want me on the basketball team because I wasn't good enough.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I grew 5 inches and he wanted me on the basketball team. I told him to fuck off.
Right.
Because, you already told me that this is about winning and not about letting everyone play.
Right,
so,
right.
And I didn't join the auto body shop people or the shop people because those are the people that beat the shit out of me.
Oh, yeah.
So I ran track. And I was in debate. And before debate, I would get a little sweaty and nervous and dry-mouthed. And before running track, there's this sort of nervous energy. You should have that.
Right.
You shouldn't be terrified. You should definitely have the nervous energy. The difference is, at the end, if you lost the debate round, fascism didn't take over your country.
Right.
The stakes in 2004 were very high.
Yeah.
And we lost. And we lost by a small margin. And that is when a lot of us started blogging. We didn't start having opinions in 2004.
No.
We started blogging in 2004 because it was suddenly clear to a lot of us that this country was actually more fucked than we thought it was. Because there were enough people in this country who were going to re-elect George Bush knowing how fucking incompetent and awful he was.
And that he'd lied us into war. Yeah.
Knowing that, they would re-elect him. And they did.
Yep.
And since then, that party has only gotten worse. They have not improved. They have not figured out that they're wrong.
No, they've dug in.
They didn't listen to the autopsy.
Yeah.
They didn't do any of that.
No.
They didn't fix themselves.
Nope.
So they are a long-term, toxic, fascist, violent fascist movement, homegrown in this country with a shit ton of money in their own media. That is not the same level of trepidation as Clinton running against George H.W. Bush.
Right.
It's just not.
No, both of them believed in democracy. George W. Bush fought in World War II.
Yeah.
And cared about the troops.
Yes, he did.
So he wanted his son to have an exit strategy for Iraq.
That's why he didn't invade. Well, common wisdom is the reason George H.W. Bush didn't roll into Baghdad because he knew what it would cost.
Yes.
And we knew that he'd never get out of there.
Right.
But his son, who was, let's face it,
an idiot,
operated like a predator drone by Dick Cheney.
Right.
But hey, enough people in this country were scared to death, and they're scared to death now. They went for the repetition of the be afraid, be afraid, be afraid message, which is what the Republicans are doing now. They went for the, if Democrats get elected, the terrorists are going to murder your children.
Yeah, right.
Which is what the Republicans are running on now.
Right.
That Republican Party hasn't changed that much in how they run elections.
Yeah.
They just now govern that way as well.
Yeah.
They govern as fascists, as opposed to pretending to be otherwise.
Yeah.
And that should really bother you, because if they were ever going to stop being this way, and I am goddamn sick of our new allies sifting through this enormous steaming pile of shit they created and coming up with, but Liz Cheney. You can't go a week without one of the three quote-unquote good Republicans being in rotation on every Never Trump podcast and broadcast. You will never hear an actual liberal on any of those shows because they don't want the actual liberals to say, here's the problem. Liz Cheney is still awful.
Yeah, right.
Liz Cheney's still fucking awful. Adam Kinzinger is still fucking awful. The whole party is fucking awful. They found their gag reflex, finally, with Donald Trump being impeached.
Yep.
But and the coup. But before that, they were who they were. So
Liz Cheney was in the Rose Garden celebrating the end of my health care.
Right. Liz Cheney believed the Democrats murdered children outside the womb and that we're pure evil.
Yep.
So it is this maddening, well, we have to accept these allies because these allies, all hands on deck. But it's not all hands on deck. Because every time, if it really were all hands on deck, then these people would shut the fuck up about both sides, It's really both sides. And they'd talk about the Democratic Party is the only way to save this fucking country.
Right.
They would be 100% star-spangled, marching down the middle of the street going, I will vote for any Democrat for the rest of my life because the Republican Party is that bad. But that's not what they do.
No.
This is a business plan to them. It very much like Fox News is a business plan.
Well, even Cassidy Hutchinson last night was saying, I will not vote for Donald Trump and I will vote for whoever is running against Donald Trump. But there's still a chance that Donald Trump won't be the Republican nominee, so I won't endorse Biden.
Yep.
Really?
And there's our problem.
Yeah.
They are, I'm sure, this is Keith Olbermann quoting the the blood-dimmed tide poem. The best lack all conviction and the worst are full of passionate intensity. It's true. They are tireless, enthusiastic, well-funded, hateful, and they have a giant megaphone, and they have all the money in the world. And we could have that on our side if the people at the top of the Democratic Party and liberals with money thought it was important, but they don't. It's not important enough to, Rob Reiner, to rally his Hollywood friends to say it's not enough to give $100,000 to the Lincoln Project. We need to build a liberal media. We all know how the media works. We're really good behind the camera. We have friends in the media. We should really start building an actual alternative to Fox. But wealthy liberals don't want to do that. They want someone else to do that. They want to throw money at the problem.
Well, but
at election time.
Let me play devil's advocate with you for 1 minute.
No. I'm the devil. You're the advocate.
Okay, I'm the advocate.
Right.
All right. Which is the liberal version of Fox would be what? A propaganda network? Like Fox's that doesn't care about the news or truth and just spews.
What does Fox have? Fox is present and aggressive on every cable platform because they have got in early, and so they're being played in garages,
right,
in hotels,
right,
and they get their carriage fees, which is how they make their money.
Right.
They're part of a portfolio, from the Wall Street Journal to the former Weekly Standard,
to all the
Post,
AM radio stations,
to all the AM radio stations, to all the white paper shops, to the Claremont Institute. It's a whole system. We do not have anything like that.
Right.
We do not have anything like that because there are not any liberals with money willing to invest the money necessary to create such a thing. And it's too late now anyway.
Right.
This is not like World War II where you can suddenly you can turn on the production spigot and say, we're going to make aircraft.
Right.
And we're going to produce enough to blot out the sun. That is not how this works anymore. Because
I just don't think that's how Democrats work either. I just don't think Democrats are as lockstep authoritarian enough to follow. Not authoritarian. To create a $1 billion, regardless of whether the money was there or not.
Right.
I don't think Democrats have and I don't want to say, it's not discipline. It's an obedience gene.
Right.
To say we're all going to follow this message of Ron DeSantis for governor of Florida. We're all going to do it. No,
you're right. But here's the alternative to that. You and I, he said, patting her hand, listen to old-time radio, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay. What do we hear on old-time radio all the time?
We hear propaganda about
World War II.
World War II and particularly food rationing, right?
Well, we do hear about food rationing.
Yeah.
And patriots need to
buy bonds.
Turn in black market. But what do we hear about Nazis?
They're bad. All of them are bad.
And what do we hear about good patriots and what good patriots should do?
They should fight Nazis.
And what do we hear about the war effort?
You have to support it.
A broad spectrum approach.
Right.
Suppose there were a liberal media that didn't say, Joe Biden is God, and because that's not what because nobody ever thought that about.
That's the difference between the liberal media you're trying to create and conservative media.
But
George W. Bush was God.
But a liberal media that went after the Republican Party and Fox News, like the American news media went after the Nazi Party and Tokyo Rose and the Lord Haw Haw in World War II. That said that it's internal. I realize it's internal, but went after the internal enemies in this country as aggressively and with the broad spectrum support of the entire entertainment industry that we went after Nazis in World War II.
I think we have that. It's just so...
Where is it?
No, I know that you just had a real shocked face. It's just so lacking in concentration that you don't see it. Unions, moms demand action, media matters, crooks and liars.
I don't dispute that.
Hal Sparks,
Where's Cecil B. DeMille?
Well, then you want an authoritarian leader over all of us to run the messaging.
No, that's clearly not what I said, and you're being devil's advocate, and I realize that.
I am.
Cecil B. DeMille was not ordering. Cecil B. DeMille was willing to put on radio shows that were anti-Nazi, using the clout he had to put on anti-Nazi.
Right.
other studio heads were willing to put on anti-fascist stuff on their movies, on radio, write songs about it, etc. It wasn't one guy dictating it. It was everyone realizes this is a threat.
Well,
so let's all do what we can in concert with each other. There is no coordinated effort between Media Matters and Crooks and Liars and the unions at all.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there should be someone on top. There should be at least some cohesion in the message. Because if you're shooting off stuff at Crooks and Liars that nobody ever sees, and unions are doing stuff in Tennessee that nobody ever hears about, the question is, why aren't people hearing about it? Well, there is no liberal media to tie all those together and deliver it to people in any sort of coherent message. Like, the Democrats are doing all this cool shit for you. And it's on the radio, and it's on television, and it's in the movies, etc. We are now at the point where World War II tactics are now required to combat what's going on in this country.
And the huge problem that we have, as you said, is that 37% of the American public are Nazis.
Right, they are.
And so it's not like World War II, in that, although Rachel Maddow's book is saying, there were a few.
Yeah.
To our great national shame, we locked up the Japanese.
Right.
And the Germans were quiet. The German Americans were quiet. And we all got behind the war effort because we were bombed and Hitler was a menace. And everyone recognized that.
That's right.
Except for, like I said, Rachel Maddow said, there were a few who really liked Hitler.
If I can get smacked around every time I criticize an ever-Trumper because, Stalin was our ally in World War II, then you have to give it to me that you're right.
Yeah.
That's why we have a need for a concerted, coordinated, mass media, multimedia attack against the Republican Party domestically. And there's no way we're going to get that. And without that, it's just a bunch of stray bullets flying in every direction. There's no coordination to it at all. And if you want to tune it out, if you wanted to tune out the war bonds, rationing,
you'd have to shoot your radio.
Go see any movie during 1943.
Right.
It started with a newsreel.
Right.
Here's what's going on in the war.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's exactly what we need, but you and I went to go see the holdovers.
The holdovers, yeah.
And we were treated to 30 minutes of fucking commercials.
Oh, absolutely.
For everything from diabetes medicine
Several
to
diabetes
cars,
medicines.
Also different diabetes medicines. There wasn't one advertisement saying, and the Republicans are Nazis, and they're very dangerous, and you should really, really be aware of that because that's bad for business. If you just go back to the 60s,
you wouldn't be able to sell that commercial anywhere. No one would put it on their
Why not?
Because it would offend 37% of the public. Yeah,
that's right.
That's the problem.
So, here's the thing. If you go back to The Twilight Zone, Rod Serling.
Yeah.
Rod Serling
He found all kinds of ways to say it without saying it.
Oh, no,
right?
he said it while saying it.
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper was in an episode about American Nazis.
Nazis, right.
And Adolf Hitler coming back from the grave, practically, as a spirit, to guide him. And it was a bunch of the guys across the street, his friends who ran a deli, I think, who were like, it can't happen here. This can't be allowed to happen here. And they're listening to this guy ranting and raving to the crowd. Rod Serling, having gone through World War II, having been a paratrooper in the Philippines, and was traumatized, was not dainty about saying Nazis are bad, and we should be absolutely clear that making them go away is a good thing. Stopping them at any cost is a good thing. But now that we have Fox, and we have people who were Nazis, this is what was it Michael Jordan said, or Charles Barkley. I forget who it was, but it was, Republicans buy sneakers too.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to take a position on politics because money.
Right.
And if money is the only factor, then we're going to lose.
Yeah.
Because if that's it, if that's all there is, if it's just,
just consumerism. Yeah.
If taking a position against fascism is bad for my business, then I'm not going to do it.
Well, but there was that concern in 1939
Yes, there was.
And there was a book that was actually in the church library when I went to church in Massachusetts in the 80s. From that era, that because you never cleaned out the church library, called You Can't Do Business with Hitler. And it was a propaganda book to say, no, you can't do business. You can't say, yeah, but, my socks will fit the German army's feet as well.
Right.
No, you don't get to do that. Now we hadn't entered the war yet. But there was a propaganda effort.
There was.
To stop people from thinking that way. So,
well, and Henry Ford got away with being explicitly pro-Hitler.
Yes,
buying his hometown newspaper and turning it into an anti-Semitic rag.
Yeah.
And turning his picture was up in Hitler Youth headquarters in Germany. And his book about it's the Jews was favored reading. He was a big hero, and he was openly, viciously anti-Semitic. Right up until December something
7th, 1941.
And then he had to shut the fuck up.
Yes,
because
he did.
now we're in the war.
Yep.
And we're all going to recognize Nazis are bad guys. And it doesn't matter what your business model is. We're not going to tolerate that anymore. And he was smart enough to shut up because the government of the United States said Nazis are bad and we're going to destroy them. There is no
urgency.
There is no equivalent urgency among people in power now. That the Republican Party is actually has a dagger to the throat of democracy and needs to be stopped at any cost. It's like, well, the New York Times is like, Republicans, they buy papers too. Yeah. And, my Republican friends on the Acela corridor, the friends who live with me, live in my neighborhood.
Park Slope,
they're nice people, and they're really just concerned about Donald Trump, and I don't want to offend them. And there's this cowardice, not just on the part of the people who run industries and will not stand up to fascists, but honestly, there's this cowardice on the part of people who worked in the media and are very upset about it and wave their arms around about it, but won't say, the problem at the New York Times is Arthur Gregg Schulzberger. They'll say it's the media.
Yeah, right.
Well, but you know who it is. You know whose name is on the check. Why don't you say his name? Well, because I don't want them to shit on me.
Yeah.
I don't want to make enemies of people who have newspapers, who have publishing corporations. So there is a timidity, even among media critics, to really get down in the dirt and say the problem is not the media. The problem is these 6 people who run major corporations. And they're the ones who are making these decisions. And here's their home address. And here's where they work. And here's how you contact them. And if you want to make them really, really, really aware of your existence, here's how you contact them. But that's not going to happen. That happens on the right all the time.
It happens on the right all the time.
All the time.
Yep.
They're willing to take, Shea Moss and Ruby Freeman.
Yeah, yep.
And
make
attack
their
them
lives
personally.
A living hell.
And make their lives a living hell because that's what fascists do.
Yep.
We are not willing to make wealthy...
because it's a crime to do that.
Well, yeah, but we're not willing to make wealthy corporate media owners uncomfortable in the slightest.
Yep.
By making their lives a little bit less comfortable.
Well, we did that to the senator from Maine, and she got all bent out of shape about shock on her sidewalk.
Well, remember when people were yelling at Sarah Huckabee in a restaurant?
Yes, right.
It was front page news.
Right.
And
how dare they?
It was such a shock that people would approach wealthy, connected individuals and make them, make a scene in public.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're Nazis marching, with tiki torches.
Yeah, right. At that same time, yeah.
And it really is an asymmetry that can only be explained by the fact that there is no one on the left or left of center who's willing to say the Democratic Party is much better than it was in 1941. 1941, there were open, segregationist, racist Klansmen in the Democratic Party.
Yep.
But right now, the much improved but still imperfect Democratic Party is the last bastion against an actual fascist party in this country. And if you are not actively opposing the fascist Republican Party every day on every platform that you have access to, and we're talking to the people who run the New York Times and the Washington Post, then you are enabling them. You have to pick a side. And you start, as we've said on this podcast from the beginning, you go after the center, the right collapses. Because the center is the problem.
Well, and that guy in the restaurant, that's what they did. They went after him. I'm independent. I think I'm going to vote for McCain.
Yeah.
And he was just hammered to the ground. So I think some of this you have to do, I hate to say it, one-on-one. Some of it we have to do on this podcast. So you talk to as many people as you can.
But that was Dave Roberts' message on the Chris Hayes Show.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Dave Roberts has 200,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
He follows me. I follow him. We've actually corresponded. This is it is nothing more or less than what people like us, I'm not taking any particular personal credit, but liberals who've been doing blogging and podcasting for a long time have been writing about for 20 years.
Right.
Which is this mushy, centrist, they don't want to actually pick a side. They don't want to actually make anybody mad, so they want to shit on both sides equally. And there's no merit in saying Democrats are doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
So you can't find anyone who's willing to give the good guys the kind of passion and financial support that the right just takes for granted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was glad to see Dave on Chris Hayes Show.
Yep.
It heartened me, but Jesus Christ, if this were an actual healthy country, that message would be the message every day in radio, on television, in the movies, in the cinemascopes. When you're going out to the Odeum with your girlfriend to the malt shop for 5-cent, malteds, and you're listening to the radio and listening to Perry Como it would all be a concerted message. Republicans are fascists. Fascists are bad. Don't vote Republicans or you're a bad person.
Very simple message.
Done. And that is somehow not good business for people who want to sell dick pills and reverse mortgages to these fucking idiots because they have money.
Yeah.
And that's why I think if you're not making plans, at least somewhere in the back of your mind, for what happens if Donald Trump actually wins? What happens? What happens if he loses by, a little bit in a few states and Republicans decide this time we're coming out armed?
Civil war. Yeah.
What are you prepared to do? What are you prepared? This is the question from Sean Connery.
Yeah. What are you prepared to do?
Now what are you prepared to do? Fine, you've done everything. Now what are you prepared to do?
Yeah.
Because that moment is coming, and if you're not ready for it, you're going to be shocked by it. Yeah. There were a whole lot of people who were stunned that the Nazis did what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
They were caught completely off guard because they never thought they were really serious.
They're not going to go into Poland. Not really.
They're not really. Yeah. They're not really going to make ghettos. They're not really going to deport people. They're not really going to kill people. Yeah, they really are. And Republicans have already told everybody exactly what they're going to do.
They're going to fire all of the civil servants in the government and take over. Yeah.
And the question is not, are they going to fire 50,000, 60,000 civil servants and put a bunch of loyalists in? That is one question. The question is to do what?
Yeah,
to accomplish what?
Yeah.
And if you don't understand that what fascism means for you, for your friends in the suburbs, this isn't going to affect them at all. They're still going to have the jobs at the insurance companies and selling cars, and the sun will still rise, but there's going to be people who start disappearing from your neighborhood, and you're never going to see them again. And there's going to be people who are taken away from your area, and you're never going to see them again. Maybe they're deported, maybe they're worse, but you're never going to hear about it.
The deportations are part of the plan.
And the reporters in your area will suddenly become not interested in those stories because those are scary stories. Mm-hmm. And they're going to talk about what a good job Donald Trump's doing and how everyone's happy with Donald Trump. And there's a few rambunctious bloggers and podcasters out there who are still mouthing off. But, here are their names and addresses. Maybe you should go pay them a visit. That's what your future looks like if Donald Trump wins. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, if Donald Trump is hit by a meteor, that's still the Republican Party's long-term plan. Mike Johnson would have no problem putting in those kind of proposals with a bunch of Jesus sprinkled on top.
Right.
So it's not Trump, it's the whole party.
Well, and on another podcast, because we're running out of time, Driftglass.
Oh, good Lord.
We'll shit all over Joe Biden for using the term MAGA Republicans versus Republicans.
Right.
Or maybe we'll do that after he wins in 2024. How about that? Lame duck Joe Biden. We can shit all over him for calling Mitch McConnell his friend.
Meanwhile, have a goddamn happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. I don't know how to edit this.
Well,
we're just going to have to post it with all of the
we'll put an
violent rhetoric.
No, we'll put an introduction. We'll put a conclusion. We can do this from memory. Each week.
We post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is...
Bosco.
We'll put up Bosco.
Who is not peeing on the carpet right now, which is kind of a fucking miracle. Thanks to some chemicals that my wife got. And
I got some spray chemicals, but we still caught him once almost doing it.
Right.
Bosco, we're talking about you.
Yeah, because we're doing this on the fly.
Yeah.
We're also pro-unions, and you can mail a letter or contribution or just tell us how wrong we are. We shouldn't worry. Everything's fine. To P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62704.
No, 62791 is the P.O. Box zip code.
Fine. Professional Love Podcast has been brought to you by the Professional Love Corporation, which is...
DGBG Productions. Mm-hmm. It's a... under a Creative Commons license. That's right.
And we are recorded live at our kitchen table, at our dining room table.
Today it was on our dining room table.
On my wife's phone, because we just did trivia, and I was like...
He was in a bad mood.
And I'm still in a bad mood. But now I'm full of whiskey.
One shot.
I had some sipping whiskey.
And he had a little time with his wife.
Well, yeah.
And he got to vent, and that's good. That's a good thing. Venting is a good thing. Also, being an activist and finding as many people as possible to vote and making your voice heard is another good thing.
It's a very good thing. Oh, I don't discourage any of that at all. I think the people who went to Spain to fight on the side of the loyalists were heroes.
Yep.
The fact that they lost is irrelevant to their heroic struggle. And eventually they won. But they won. How did they win eventually? Well, actually, Franco stayed in power, but they won because the fascists in Europe were destroyed, and Berlin was bombed flat, and Hitler was dead, and the Nazis were strung up like the criminals they were. Yeah. That is not an option for us at this time.
No.
But you got to beat the fascists back into the sewers where they belong.
Maybe 31 ways to be rapture ready is the right way to go, Driftglass.
31 ways.
Convince them to get rapture ready.
31 ways to be Trump ready.
That's our message.
Yeah.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties wish all of you a very, very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Driftglass.
My pleasure, Blue Gal. I love you.
I love you, too.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Just think about loving. Think about loving. Just think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left Podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2023 DGBG Productions.